"I'll fix this little sprout," the girl told the millionaire. Then she poured a mysterious liquid into the little girl's mouth, and 5 seconds later, a miracle occurred. Please rate my story from 0 to 10. Your opinion is very important, and subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help. The scream echoed through the town square like a knife slicing through the afternoon stillness. 30-year-old widower and millionaire Jasper Thornton instinctively adjusted his Italian silk tie as he walked through the manicured gardens, gently holding the small hand of his 4-year-old daughter, Hazel. The blonde child, dressed in a blue velvet dress that cost more than many families' monthly salaries, watched the world around her with big, curious eyes, but her lips remained sealed in a silence that had lasted her entire young life. The businessman had amassed his fortune through savvy investments in the stock market, turning thousands into millions with a mathematical precision that impressed even the most experienced analysts. His net worth in dollars grew exponentially each quarter, supported by a diversified portfolio that included shares in tech companies and even some investments in modern cryptocurrencies. Despite all this material wealth, there was something his money could never buy: a single word from his only child. The little girl had been born perfect in every physical aspect, but something in her neurological development kept her trapped in a silent world that no specialist could fully decipher. The best doctors in the region had examined the child, performing expensive tests and experimental procedures that cost a small fortune. But all came to the same frustrating conclusion. There was no clear medical explanation for her condition. On that golden afternoon, as father and daughter walked through the bustling square, a small and fragile figure emerged from the shadows between the trees. It was a 4-year-old street urchin, though her skeletal and malnourished appearance made her look only 2 years old. Her dark hair was matted and dirty, her clothes were rags that barely covered her thin body, and her bare feet were marked by premature wounds and calluses. The little beggar approached the businessman and his daughter timidly, carrying in her hands an old plastic bottle containing a dark, thick liquid that swayed with mesmerizing movements. Her eyes shone with a strange determination for someone so young, as if she carried knowledge that transcended her apparent age. "Mister," said the street girl with a raspy voice that betrayed months of exposure to the cold and hunger, "I can heal your daughter. I have a special potion here that will make her speak." The millionaire looked down with a mixture of irritation and pity. He was used to beggars in the downtown area, but he had never been approached by such a small child, making such absurd promises. His first reaction was to pull his daughter away from the beggar, protecting her from what he considered to be just another desperate attempt to get money. "I don't need your potions," he replied coldly, trying to get around the little obstacle blocking his path. "And I suggest you find a proper shelter for your age." But something extraordinary happened at that moment. His daughter, who normally remained passive during any social interaction, let go of his hand and took a few steps toward the street girl. The two children stared at each other in silence for long seconds, as if they shared a secret language that only they could understand. The beggar raised the plastic bottle, shaking it gently. "My grandma taught me how to make this before she passed. These are special herbs that only grow in places where the earth has suffered a lot, but still chooses to bloom, like us." The businessman felt something strange in his chest, a sensation he hadn't experienced since he lost his wife in an accident he preferred not to remember. There was something in the speech of that mistreated child that touched a sensitive chord in his soul, hardened by business and responsibilities. His blonde daughter continued walking towards the beggar until they were face to face, two girls of the same age separated by a social abyss that seemed impassable. The rich child extended her delicate little hand and gently touched the dirty face of the street girl, a gesture of pure compassion that made the father's heart clench. "She wants me to give her the potion," said the beggar, interpreting the silent gesture with a wisdom that contrasted brutally with her appearance of abandonment. "I can see it in her eyes. She's tired of living in silence." The millionaire hesitated. All his rational training screamed against that absurd situation, but something deeper, perhaps the paternal despair accumulated over 4 years, made him consider the proposal. He'd spent fortunes on conventional treatments without any results. What more harm could one more attempt do? "How much do you want?" he finally asked, surprising himself with his own question. The street girl smiled for the first time, revealing small teeth yellowed by malnutrition. "I just want you to believe that good things can come from places where no one expects to find them." Before the businessman could fully process that philosophical response coming from a 4-year-old child, the beggar had already opened the bottle and offered the contents to his daughter. The dark liquid had a sweet and earthy aroma, as if it were made of ancient roots and secrets guarded by nature. The blonde girl looked at her father, asking for silent permission with her big, trusting eyes. He nodded slowly, feeling that he was about to witness something that would change their lives forever, without yet knowing whether it would be for better or worse. The millionaire's daughter took the bottle to her small lips and drank the dark liquid in one gulp, grimacing at the bitter taste that spread through her mouth. The businessman held his breath, watching every movement of the child with a tension that made his muscles contract involuntarily. For a few seconds, that seemed like an eternity. Nothing happened except the soft wind shaking the leaves of the trees around them. Then, as if a switch had been flipped in her brain, the blonde girl opened her mouth and spoke her first words with a crystal clarity that echoed throughout the square. "Daddy, can I take my new little sister home?" The millionaire staggered back, feeling his legs weaken with the emotional impact. 4 years of absolute silence had been broken by a simple sentence, but one that carried a devastating emotional weight. Tears sprang from his eyes without him being able to control them, as his mind tried to process the miracle he had just witnessed. The little beggar smiled shyly, seeming as surprised as anyone with the result of her potion. She had kept that special liquid for months, waiting for the right moment to use it, but she never imagined that it would work so dramatically and immediately. "How is that possible?" murmured the businessman, crouching down to be at the height of the two girls. His voice trembled with a mixture of joy, confusion, and disbelief that made each word difficult to pronounce. The beggar shrugged with the naturalness of a child who still did not fully understand the magnitude of what had happened. "My grandma said that some plants know secrets that doctors have forgotten. She taught me how to mix the right leaves when the moon was in the right position." At that moment, the reality of the situation began to settle in the millionaire's mind. His daughter had regained her speech, but now he faced a complex moral dilemma: what to do with the child who had made that miracle possible. He couldn't simply ignore her after what had happened, but he also hadn't considered the implications of taking a beggar to his luxurious mansion. "What's your name?" he asked the street girl, trying to process the situation with some rationality. "The people on the street call me different names," she replied with a premature sadness in her small voice. "But my grandma called me Solace, because she said I brought light to dark places." The businessman's daughter, still marveling at her newfound ability to express herself, held the beggar's hand with childish determination. "Daddy, she needs to come with us. She gave me my voice back. Now I can talk to her every day." The millionaire looked around the square, noticing that his unusual interaction with the two children was attracting curious glances from passers-by. Some watched with benevolent interest, others with clear disapproval, at seeing a rich man interacting with a dirty beggar. He realized that any decision he made at that moment would have lasting consequences. "Where do you live?" he asked little Solace, although he already suspected the answer from the child's deteriorated appearance. "I live where the night finds me," she replied with a heartbreaking maturity. "Sometimes under the bridge, sometimes in the park when the guards aren't looking. After my grandma passed, I learned to hide well. The information hit the businessman like a punch in the stomach. Here was a child the same age as his daughter, living on the streets without any protection or care, surviving only with ancestral knowledge about medicinal plants that a grandmother had taught her before leaving forever. His daughter pulled the sleeve of his expensive suit, forcing him to bend down to hear what she had to say. "Daddy, if she gave me my voice, I can give her a home." It's fair, isn't it? The childish logic of his daughter was both simple and profound, touching on issues of justice and reciprocity that he rarely considered in his daily business. His investments in the stock market always followed principles of risk and return, but here was a situation where mathematical calculations did not apply. "Do you have more of that potion?" he asked Solace, trying to better understand the knowledge she possessed. The girl shook her head negatively. "That was the last one. It took me weeks to find all the right plants. Some only grow after the earth has gone through a lot of suffering, like after fires or in places where many tears have been shed." The businessman felt a chill run down his spine. There was something deeply disturbing in the way that child spoke about suffering and healing, as if she had experienced things that no one her age should know. His paternal instinct, dormant for years of exclusive focus on business, began to awaken with unexpected force. "Do you want to come with us?" he finally asked, surprising himself with the spontaneity of the question. Solace's eyes filled with tears, but she hesitated before answering. "Do you really want a dirty girl like me in your beautiful house?" "I don't want to cause problems for you." His daughter, demonstrating a determination he had never seen before, stood next to Solace and declared in a firm voice, "You're not dirty, you're magic, and magic should always have a special place to live." At that moment, the millionaire made a decision that would change the course of their lives. He extended his hands to the two girls and said, "Then let's go home. All of us." As they walked towards his luxury car parked at the edge of the square, the businessman couldn't stop thinking about the implications of what he was doing. His stepmother, who lived in the mansion and had taken on the role of managing the house after his marriage to her 2 years earlier, would certainly not be happy with that impulsive decision. The 45-year-old woman had always shown little affection for her stepdaughter, tolerating her presence only for the fortune she represented as the sole heir to the family estate. The arrival of a beggar would certainly further destabilize the already tense dynamics of his residence. But as he watched his two daughters, because now he thought of Solace that way, walking hand in hand towards the car, he felt that he had made the most correct decision of his life. His fortune accumulated over the years would finally have a purpose greater than simply generating more wealth. What he didn't imagine was that that seemingly simple decision would trigger a series of events that would test not only his determination as a father, but also reveal secrets about his own family that had been buried for decades, secrets that little Solace would help to unearth in unimaginable ways. The mansion stood majestically at the end of the tree-lined avenue, its perfectly manicured gardens contrasting brutally with Solace's tattered appearance as she got out of the luxury car. The little beggar watched the imposing facade with wide eyes, trying to process that palace would be her new home. Her small, dirty hands nervously squeezed the rags she wore as a dress, feeling completely out of place in that environment of ostentatious wealth. The elderly housekeeper of the house, a kind lady of 60 who had been taking care of the family for 2 decades, was the first to notice the unusual arrival. Her experienced eyes immediately identified the signs of malnutrition and abandonment in the child, and her maternal heart clenched with genuine compassion that she had not felt for years. "Sir," she said discreetly to the businessman, "the madam is waiting for you in the library. She seems agitated." The millionaire sighed deeply, knowing that the confrontation with his stepmother would be inevitable. The woman had developed a rigid routine in the mansion, controlling every aspect of domestic life with a military precision that left little room for surprises. The unexpected arrival of a child from the streets would certainly disrupt her sense of established order. His daughter, still ecstatic with her newly discovered ability to speak, chattered incessantly with Solace, asking questions about her life on the streets with the innocent curiosity typical of a 4-year-old child. "Did you really sleep under the stars? Weren't you afraid of the dark? How did you know which plants were special?" Solace answered patiently to each question, her soft voice contrasting with the harshness of her experiences. "The stars were my friends. They told me stories when I was scared. And my grandma taught me that nature always takes care of those who know how to listen to its secrets." The stepmother appeared in the entrance hall like an elegant storm, her high heels clacking on the polished marble with a rhythm that betrayed her growing irritation. She had invested considerable energy in shaping that house according to her vision of aristocratic perfection, and the presence of a beggar represented a direct threat to everything she had built. "What does this mean?" she asked with a cutting coldness, her eyes scanning Solace from top to bottom with evident disgust. "Why did you bring this child into our house?" The businessman straightened his shoulders, preparing for a battle that he knew would be inevitable. "She helped our daughter to recover her speech. Now she's part of the family." "Part of the family?" repeated the stepmother with a bitter laugh. "That dirty beggar? Have you completely lost your mind? Think about our reputation, our business. What will investors think when they find out we're harboring a vagrant?" The little girl visibly cringed with the harsh words, but her new sister immediately came to her defense. "She's not a vagrant. She's magic. She made me speak when no doctor could." The revelation that the stepdaughter had regained her speech hit the stepmother like a bucket of ice water. For years, she had secretly comforted herself with the idea that the disabled child would be easily manipulated when she inherited the family fortune. The possibility that she could now express herself and question decisions represented a complication that she had not foreseen. "That's impossible," she murmured, studying the animated face of the stepdaughter with a mixture of shock and growing apprehension. The best specialists said she would never speak. The housekeeper, who had observed the entire interaction in silence, stepped forward with unusual courage. "May I give little Solace a bath and find some suitable clothes for her? It seems she's been without basic care for a long time." The practical suggestion momentarily broke the tension in the room, but the stepmother quickly resumed her hostile stance. "Absolutely not. That child is not going to contaminate our bathrooms or wear our clothes. If she must stay here, it will be in the servants' quarters." The businessman felt his patience completely drain away. His considerable fortune, built through calculated decisions and intelligent investments, had given him enough power never to accept ultimatums in his own home. "Solace will stay in the room next to my daughter's room, and she will be treated with the same respect and care that any member of this family deserves." "You are making a colossal mistake," hissed the stepmother, her eyes gleaming with a cold fury that made the air around her seem denser. "This decision will have consequences you can't even imagine." That night, after Solace had taken her first hot bath in months and put on clean clothes that the housekeeper had discreetly provided, something extraordinary began to happen. The millionaire's daughter, now able to express thoughts she had kept to herself for 4 years, began to talk about strange dreams she had regularly. "Solace," she said as the two girls played in the luxurious room, "I always dream about a very sad lady who stands near a big tree. She cries a lot and repeats a name that I can't quite understand." The little healer stopped playing and stared at her new sister. "What tree? What does it look like?" "It's very tall, with branches that look like arms trying to hug the sky. And it has white flowers that fall like snow, even when it's not winter." Solace turned pale, immediately recognizing the description. "It's a centuries-old magnolia. My grandma took me to see one just like it before she passed. She said those trees hold memories of people who suffered a lot for love. The revelation created a mysterious connection between the two girls that neither of them could fully understand. There was something in the millionaire's daughter's visions that connected with the ancestral knowledge that Solace had inherited from her grandmother, as if pieces of a complex puzzle were beginning to fit together. During the following days, the stepmother's hostility only intensified. She began to spread subtle rumors among the servants about valuable objects that had supposedly disappeared after Solace's arrival. Small items were strategically moved and then discovered in locations that could incriminate the child. The housekeeper, however, had developed a protective instinct for little Solace that transcended her professional obligations. She began to discreetly document each of the false accusations, creating a detailed record of the stepmother's manipulations. "Sir," she said one morning to the businessman during breakfast, "I would like to talk to you about some incidents that I've observed in the house." But before she could elaborate, a desperate scream echoed through the upper floor. Solace had suddenly fainted in the bathroom, her fragile body finally succumbing to the accumulated effects of months of malnutrition and exposure to the elements. The miraculous potion that had healed the millionaire's daughter had apparently exhausted the last reserves of energy that had kept the little healer going. The businessman carried Solace's unconscious body to her room, watching with growing horror as she seemed to have aged years in a matter of seconds. Her skin was pale as paper, her breathing was irregular and weak, and a high fever made her body tremble violently. "Call the best doctor in the region," he ordered the housekeeper, his voice laden with a panic he hadn't felt since the loss of his wife. "And if he can't come immediately, call every doctor in the city. I will spare no resources to save her." The stepmother watched all the commotion from afar, a cruel smile playing on her lips. If nature took it upon itself to remove that complication from their lives, she wouldn't need to get her own hands dirty with more direct methods. But what she didn't know was that Solace's condition would awaken family secrets that had been buried for decades, secrets that would connect the millionaire's past with the present in a devastating and irrevocable way. The family's private doctor arrived at the mansion in less than an hour, bringing with him a team of specialists who transformed Solace's room into an improvised intensive care unit. The businessman watched every move of the professionals with an anxiety that made his hands tremble involuntarily, while his daughter flatly refused to leave the side of the bed where the little healer struggled between life and consciousness. "The malnutrition is severe," explained the doctor after the first complete examination. "This child's body has gone through extreme deprivations for months. It is surprising that she has managed to remain conscious for so long. We will need intensive care for at least 2 weeks." For 3 consecutive days, Solace remained unconscious, her fragile body connected to tubes and monitors that emitted constant beeps, reminding everyone of the fragility of her condition. The millionaire spared no expense, hiring the best specialists in child nutrition and requesting tests that cost a small fortune, but that could reveal any hidden complication. The housekeeper had taken on the role of dedicated nurse, alternating with the medical team to ensure that Solace was never alone. During her nightly vigils, she began to notice something peculiar. The girl mumbled strange words during her sleep, names of plants and formulas that seemed like ancestral recipes transmitted orally through generations. "Mugwort leaves when the moon wanes, chanchapiedra root in the morning dew," Solace whispered in her moments of semi-consciousness, as if she were reliving lessons that her grandmother had taught her during years of intimate coexistence with folk wisdom. The millionaire's daughter, determined to help her new sister in some way, began to have more vivid and frequent visions during Solace's illness. The images of the sad lady near the magnolia became clearer, revealing details that a 4-year-old child should not be able to perceive with such precision. "Daddy," she said one morning, holding Solace's unconscious hand with childish determination, The lady in my dreams is trying to tell me something important. She shows a small box buried under the big tree. The businessman felt a chill run down his spine. There was something disturbingly familiar in that description, as if fragments of repressed memories were trying to emerge from a past that he had deliberately forgotten. His investments in Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies had occupied so much of his attention in recent years that he rarely thought about events prior to his current fortune. The stepmother, observing Solace's critical condition with a poorly disguised satisfaction, began to intensify her efforts to convince the businessman that the child represented an unnecessary burden for the family. "See how much money you've already spent on that beggar," she argued during tense dinners. "Our investment funds could yield much more if we weren't wasting resources on lost causes." On the fourth day, when the doctors were beginning to express growing concerns about the possibility of permanent damage due to the prolonged time of unconsciousness, something unexpected happened. Solace opened her eyes suddenly during dawn, whispering a single word that made the housekeeper immediately call the businessman, "Magnolia." When he came running to the room, he found Solace sitting on the bed with a surprising lucidity, considering her critical condition of the previous days. Her eyes, although still reflecting the fragility of her body, shone with a determination that seemed to transcend her age. "I need to tell you about my grandma," she said with a weak but firm voice. "She told me secrets about a rich family who lived in a big house, a family that had a daughter who never spoke, and a son who lost his wife in a very sad accident." The millionaire felt the blood freeze in his veins. It was impossible that that child knew such specific details about his personal life, information that he had shared with very few people over the years. How could a street beggar know intimate aspects of his family history? "My grandma used to take care of a very beautiful lady who got pregnant when she was young," continued Solace, ignoring the growing paleness on the businessman's face. "But she could never take care of the baby because bad people said she wasn't worthy of being a mother. The baby was given to a rich family, but the real mother never stopped looking." The revelation hit the businessman like an emotional tsunami. Fragments of conversations he had heard in his childhood, whispers between adults who thought he was sleeping, began to reorganize in his mind, forming a devastating picture that he had never considered before. His daughter, who had remained silent throughout the revelation, suddenly stood up from her chair and declared with a conviction that chilled the blood of everyone present, "The lady in my dreams is Solace's real mother. And she's buried under the magnolia that's in the backyard of our house." The housekeeper let out an audible sigh, her decades of service to the family having provided her with knowledge about secrets that she had faithfully kept for years. "Sir," she said with a trembling voice, "there is something I need to tell you about the backyard. About why the old lady of the house specifically asked to plant that magnolia in that exact location." The businessman looked alternately at Solace, his daughter, and the housekeeper, feeling that his life was about to be turned upside down by revelations that would challenge everything he thought he knew about his own history. His fortune, built meticulously through smart investments and asset diversification, suddenly seemed insignificant in the face of the possibility that his family held secrets that could fundamentally change his understanding of who he really was. 25 years ago, began the housekeeper with tears in her eyes, a very sick young woman came knocking on the door of this house. She was carrying a newborn baby and begged to speak to the lady of the house. But she was sent away without being able to deliver a letter she had written. Solace nodded gravely, as if she had heard that story many times. "My grandma said that the girl died 3 days later, but before that, she buried the letter under the tree that she planted with her own hands. She hoped that one day someone would find it and discover the truth." The stepmother, who had been listening to the conversation from the hallway, felt a desperate urgency growing in her chest. If those secrets were revealed, the entire power structure she had built in the family would crumble instantly. She needed to act quickly to prevent the truth from coming to light before it was too late to protect her privileged position. That night, while everyone slept exhausted by the day's revelations, the stepmother silently went to the backyard with a small shovel, determined to find and destroy any evidence that could threaten her future in the family. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel. I promise to bring you videos every day that will make your life happier. Comment what you thought of my story, giving it a rating from 0 to 10, and thank you very much.